your preferred partner for custom software development and technology outsourcing. We offer state-of-the-art customized software development services that are client-centric, flexible, and secure to empower businesses.
Why don't we start out with each of the panelists introducing themselves. We'll start with Ryan.
Good morning, everybody. Ryan Cloutier, President of Security Studio. Really excited to be here and talk to you guys about this today.
Vincent?
And my name's Vincent Cosomano. I work for Vijilan Security, a company that helps MSPs with security, and I also teach at the University of Miami students who want to get into security.
Fantastic. So I think there are some statistics that we were talking about backstage, and you guys are probably both familiar with them. And I think they're so important that we should just start off letting people know, even if they don't think about cybersecurity, and even if cybersecurity is not a main part of their business, for those people that might not be MSPs in the room, I just think this is so important for everyone to know. We talked about a stat that if a company is hit with ransomware, there's a 60% chance that they're going to get hit again within a year, which is staggering, really staggering, because each one of these attacks can cost a business hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. What are some of the other stats which people may not realize, but that are important in cybersecurity?
I think one of the stats that a lot of folks don't know is that 60% of small businesses will go out of business within 1 year of having a cyber attack. And that's even if they have cyber liability insurance. They're not structured to be able to ride that. I think another stat that's really important to understand is 89% of security breaches are the result of your vendor or a third party to your vendor, not necessarily the company itself.
Well, it's pretty staggering. So it's really, the supply chain basically is so important, and you really have to stay on top of it because you can have a threat come in which you didn't expect.
Absolutely, and I think we, as security folk and as managed service providers, all of us are using a third party. I don't think there's anyone here at this conference this week that doesn't have at least one third party they're relying on, whether that's a cloud service provider, whether that's an application service provider. All of us are really relying on other people to keep our data safe. Most of us don't have data in our environment anymore. And so, those contracts, doing those risk assessments, knowing what that security is for those vendors is a critical part of doing business these days. That's
great. Do you have anything to add, Vincent?
I don't have a stat for this, but a lot of our partners are looking at cybersecurity insurance, and there's a panel on it later. What we're finding is that a lot of the insurance providers are changing the policies. So the few that did cover ransomware for the total limit of the policy either no longer do, or it's an exclusion altogether. And that's something that is the main reason a lot of our partners are buying cybersecurity insurance, and it's no longer mitigating that risk.
So that's a game changer. It's a game changer for the enterprise. It's a game changer for MSPs. Going forward, and I had heard this was happening, and some of the large insurance contacts that I had a few years back said, no, we'll continue to support companies. But as the amount of attacks increases and the amount of damage per attack increases, obviously insurance companies want to insure clients that don't get hacked. Because that's how they make their money. So that is logical that eventually it would come to an end. And so for businesses, and many businesses are somewhat lax on their cybersecurity, hoping that their insurance will cover them in case of a problem. So what you're saying is that in the future, that crutch that these companies have is going away, leaving them exposed because many of them have not been focusing on the cybersecurity part as well as they should because they've been relying on a different vector to protect them. So now, having said all that, they're going to have to scramble to get things working within their organization and so that they're secure, which is the opportunity. And for those of you that are not MSPs, the importance of paying attention and knowing that this is happening and that you're going to need to be ready to take control of your security to prevent hackers. And this has become even more apparent in the last 17 months, and so many companies have been forced to allow remote work. And these remote workers, and oftentimes they didn't have the cybersecurity in their homes to work properly, and that there were even more breaches. The hackers knew this, so they were hacking even more. Like, what have you guys seen since the pandemic in terms of just hacking and cybersecurity in general?
So we have seen a lot of organizations that were relying on older infrastructure like on-prem firewalls and thinking, well, everybody is at the office, so all the traffic will go through the firewall. And that was true for a lot of organizations. But there's also technologies that previously were cost prohibitive for small businesses where you might be able to afford an antivirus solution but not a centrally managed endpoint detection and response solution. That has changed where it's now affordable, and we're watching a lot more MSPs be able to start providing those to their clients to both increase revenue but also protect them outside of that premise of the physical office.
Yeah, and I would say within the space we work in, and we work very closely with a lot of MSPs. Security Studio actually helps MSPs get into the security business with our solution. So come check us out at the booth. That's the only plug I'll do. What we've seen is a trend within our customer base where either their insurance coverage is going up so significantly that it's hurting margin. In some cases, they're not being covered at all because they don't have a plan. They don't have an incident response plan. They don't have a risk assessment. They haven't done the fundamental things that we need to do to protect ourselves. Endpoint detection's great, but if you don't have someone that's able to respond to that, if you don't have an asset inventory, you're putting the cart before the horse. So what we've seen is a lot of customers who didn't do those basics, and they could kind of hide it while the employees were inside the building. Now that those employees are at home, they don't even know what laptops have been issued to what people. So now they've got all this traffic coming in from all over the place, coming from these home networks, and they don't know if it's legitimate or not. So we've actually seen a decrease in the ability of security operations centers to be able to detect and respond, because the pattern they used to follow now just looks like a big Jackson Pollock painting. And so they're trying to figure this out. And so we're seeing more attacks successfully executed. We're seeing a new scary trend, by the way, called jackware. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this yet, but jackware is a new type of ransomware that instead of encrypting your files, it destroys your hardware. So the bad guys are escalating. So anyone here that's a hardware vendor, that's good news for you. For the rest of us, it's very scary.
Wow, that is, I have not heard that term, and I'm obviously pretty up to date on this space, so that's good to know. It's like breaking news. There was some years back, it's interesting that there's a crossover between nation-state hackers and hackers, and it gets really dangerous when a nation-state targets either companies within a country or an industry or whatever it is that they are going after, like North Korea went after Sony Pictures, for example. But Russia had an attack vector called a NotPetya, which that reminds me of maybe 6 years ago, where they basically took ransomware code and just had it destroy files, and they were non-recoverable. And I actually did research to see how much damage was done based on publicly stated comments from publicly traded companies. Based on that NotPetya attack, it was over $10 billion worth of damage was done just from one attack by the Russians. And what they did was really interesting. They targeted people within the companies in the Ukraine they wanted to go after. And for those people that they could not successfully attack, they actually went to a tax preparation site and they downloaded or they uploaded malicious code so that whenever financial people in Ukraine went to this site, malicious code was downloaded on their computer, which eventually wiped out every computer on the network. And so they had, they may have used other vectors as well, but those are the two I was aware of. So it's really, really scary when you start to just piece together all the different groups that you have to watch out for. In your opinion, guys, is there any technology or new technology that the audience should be aware of that can help them, that can help them, their customers stay more protected?
Yeah, I think from a technology perspective, there's lots of stuff out there. I think the best way to help your customers, get them focused on doing the basics. Get a risk assessment done and know what you have, know where it is and know what it does. Vulnerability and patch management. some multi-factor authentication, and some good backups will do more to help your client be secure and be ready to respond than I think all the fancy state-of-the-art artificial intelligence, right? That stuff's great if you have a very mature security program, but if you don't, focus on the basics. We're still getting stuff wrong that we've been preaching for 25 years. Keep your computer up to date is something my entire career I've been telling people that. So I think we really need to focus back. And then as MSPs, you guys should be very aware that you are an increasing target for the hackers, I call them cyber criminals because I am a hacker, right? So I prefer to call them cyber criminals. But they're going to target you because they know that you have a target-rich environment. You have a lot of data on your customers. In a lot of cases, you guys are phone service providers, you are file service providers, you are cloud service providers. I'm not going to go after one person if I can go after 100. And you have that 100. So I think it's important that MSPs start to upskill their own security internally, but also start thinking about how you can offset that cost by delivering security services. And I know a lot of MSPs go, well, I don't do IT security, maybe I do just this or that. Your customer has a trust relationship with you, and they're looking for you to provide them that guidance. There are folks like myself who specialize in helping you get security programs in place without having to upscale a whole bunch of high-dollar security people or invest fortunes of money and try to learn this new thing. So I think there's a synergy there where if you partner with the right organizations who do provide security, such as Vincent and myself, you guys are going to be able to deliver high-quality services to your customers at a good margin, do the right thing, and at the same time protect yourself. So I think, technology can help, but I think culture is far more important.
I definitely agree. I think there's technology that's becoming more affordable, but we also see all these terms that come out, like endpoint detection and response, which I referenced earlier. I'm seeing a lot of products with the EDR name that don't look any different than traditional antivirus to me. Mm-hmm. It looks the same thing that I've been seeing and selling for 10 years now, and it's been available much longer than that. So that's not new. We have renamed things, and we'll continue to rename things to be able to continue to sell things, but security has not changed. Security has been and always will be about discussing risk in a good way with your client. It's learning how to ask the right questions so that you can learn what your client cares about. It's not the regulation, it's not the hackers, it's whatever your specific client is concerned about, and then that's where you can start the discussion. And once you understand what their concerns are, you can connect all of these other things that people discuss in security to those concerns. And at the end of the day, they're a specific bottom line. If we don't understand our client's business, we can't secure them because security is not about all of these products. Security is about understanding the risk to that specific organization and then managing that risk. And a product, any of the products that you'll see either at this show or any of the other shows cannot help you unless you are using those products as part of that goal.
Amen. Well said. Risk in context, right? That's what we need to focus on, is putting risk into context so we can make informed decisions about where to spend that next information security dollar. You can't fix everything. You won't fix everything. But I think there's a lot of missed opportunity for managed service providers today who aren't taking a serious look at this. Just to give you guys a ballpark, generally a security assessment, you can easily bill between $25,000 and $50,000, and they take about 16 to 20 hours to conduct. So if you're not taking advantage of that, throw one more stat out at you guys. 6.5 million small businesses in this country are going unserved with their cybersecurity needs.
Wow, pretty staggering. So my question next was going to be, tell us about the opportunity, but you're kind of pretty much stating what the opportunity is, right? The assessments of the client, and then solving the problems. And then we talked a little bit about culture, and I think it's important to realize that for many companies, they siloed technology as technology and business as business, and they were different. Right, you had your tech spend, but it wasn't necessarily essential to your business. Now, that's not the case for maybe a cloud company like an Amazon or those types of companies. They realize that technology is their business, but After the pandemic hit, I think more companies now understand that without technology, they would have not been in business anymore. So even the companies that are, when you think of a restaurant, if they didn't figure out how to do deliveries and some kind of automated deliveries, they went out of business. So every single company had to figure out how to become more digitally savvy. More importantly, they realized that digital was the key to survival and making money and being in business and doing better. And so we have to hope, because I always worry about these companies that they just don't have the culture of cybersecurity. We have to hope that they're coming around to the fact that digital technology is business. It's not a separate silo. And I think if we can convince them with the stats that we have here and some of the security assessments and some of the other things that we're doing, then we're going to be in a much better shape as a society, because there's nothing worse than seeing gas prices shoot up because of a hack, or you can no longer get meat because of a hack, or whatever some of the other things are. And you know, don't think our power grid isn't being tested constantly, and our nuclear power plants and other essential services. So it's really important that that everyone just gets a hold of this concept, and that is that technology is not separate from business. Technology is essential for every business. And if we can just get that across to you guys and to your customers, I think we're going to be in great shape as an industry, because this is a cat and mouse war, and you know, no matter how much better we do, the hackers are going to spend money to try to get ahead of us, and so we're constantly going to be in this battle, and we have to try to get ahead of it and stay ahead of it. So, guys, what else should let me rephrase this question this way. If you had to give us a list of some of the worst things you've seen out there, some of the things that are just shocking that the MSPs can look for and that they should just be aware of, what are some of those?
So this week specifically, we are seeing more public water sources attacked. There have been incidences in this country involving power generation facilities, some of them maybe using radioactive materials, where the rods have moved in and out. Basically, if it's got a 1 and 0, you can make it happen. What I want you guys to understand is we're playing minor league ball, we're T-ball, okay? We're little league, and we're trying to play against the majors. So the cyber criminals are playing major league ball, and our best efforts today look like a ragtag little league team. And part of that is because we yet, as a people, as a whole, have not realized that we live digital lives. So to your point earlier, Rich, about businesses having to make that transition to be a digital business that also happens to be a restaurant, a digital business that also happens to be an auto repair shop or happens to be a hairstylist. They have to have that digital first in order to survive in this modern world. I guarantee you every single person in this room has a smartphone. I guarantee you're using that smartphone to conduct your life, but are you treating it like the extension of your hand that it really is? Do you keep it as safe as you do your arm? I like to think about this as life skills, right? It's a digital life skill. And that's what the businesses need to understand is this is bigger than just doing something for a checkbox. This is the world we all live in now. And if we want to stay safe, we want clean drinking water, we want the lights to stay on, we want the meat prices to stay down, gas in the tank. We have to begin to look at this differently, and we have to begin to take this as seriously as we do every other part of our business. And there's a ton of opportunity for you out there, especially if you approach it from that mindset.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of security is about relationships. I mentioned knowing the business you're trying to secure before you can secure it. As MSPs, security is certainly something you can use to generate additional recurring revenue. But it's more than that. Even just from a business bottom line perspective, it's customer retention. When your customers are talking to you and you're helping them understand what the threats are to their business and understand how they can move past things that were concerning them so they can focus on whatever their dream was, you're helping them run that business and you become a trusted advisor. And then it's not a matter of comparing your price to somebody else's price and looking at you purely on their balance sheet. They're seeing you as an extension of their team and as an enabler who is helping them excel. And relationships go beyond just you and your clients. It's also important to have relationships with the other people in your area. So IT service providers in the room, you're attending an event like this with other IT service providers. You're meeting each other, you're learning from each other, and you're giving each other advice. That is really important. Rich mentioned the critical infrastructure sectors, things like water and power. For a long time, they've been collaborating. Just because there's one gas company and a different gas company or power companies doesn't mean they're not still working together for protection. And they work with organizations like the FBI to make sure that they're organized. And there's a similar thing for the country as a whole. There's something called the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3. And they create an annual report every single year from the complaints that they receive about cybercrime. So it's a good way for our country to measure the economic impact of cybercrime and see how it's affecting our economy at the larger scale. Instead of just hearing about this business that went under and that business went under, we can look at where is our country struggling. And it's large numbers every single year, but it's entirely based off of what people report to the FBI. Because people think that working with the FBI means reporters and being on the news, but it doesn't have to. So organizations even like the FBI and the Secret Service understand they have to partner with private industry in order for them to accomplish their mission. And so I encourage all the IT service providers and all the IT professionals in the room to consider building partnerships with those around you, both your peers in your sector and the government agencies that are there to try and help you. They can't protect you if you're not in the room talking to them.
Thank you. So I have a question that I'm actually surprised we haven't focused on more. I was expecting you guys to talk about it a little bit more, and I'm going to bring it up and get your thoughts on it. Security awareness training for workers who are targeted by phishing, spear phishing, whaling attacks. What are your thoughts on just that space and the attack vector of an evildoer or whatever we want to call them? What was the term you used?
Cyber criminals.
Cyber criminals or whatever the terminology is, right? Bad hacker, black hat hacker. They find a person within an organization that they want to hack into. They find their likes on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Even if your Facebook's private, you'll be surprised that information leaks out, because if you post something on someone else's wall that's not private, you can theoretically find that information via search engine. And so now I have a sense of what your opinions are, what your likes and dislikes are, and then I craft messages to you based upon your likes and dislikes, and I try to get you to click. So for example, if you mention on Facebook that you like country music, or there's something that shows that you like country music based on social network activity, sending a free country music ticket to a concert, I guess post-pandemic that works a lot better, but you guys get the idea, and trying to get you to click on that link could potentially be successful, and that's quite often what hackers do. What are your thoughts on training users so they look for that thing, that kind of thing, and just keeping the company more safe?
So this is something that Security Studio provides at no cost. We have an assessment called the S2Me. What we figured out about 5 years ago is security awareness training doesn't work. And it doesn't work because there's no element that requires care. I'm doing this because the boss said so, or the insurance guy said so. I'll watch the silly slide deck, I'll fall asleep, I'll check the boxes, and I'll move on. But I won't change my behavior because it doesn't matter to me. It's the company's data, it's the company's email, it's the company's money, it's not mine. So what we discovered is if we change that conversation from what do you do at work, because if I say what do you do at work, you're going to say, boss, everything you said, every time, all the time. We know that's not true. So we changed it and we said, how do you keep your family safe from cybercrime? How are you protecting your parents from being frauded? How are you keeping your children safe from predators? How are you protecting your medical data? We have a big problem in Minnesota right now during the pandemic where senior citizens went to mail order medication. And the bad guys knew that, And so they started looking for the senior citizens getting the bag of Oxycontin delivered to the front door, and they would just beat grandma to the door. They'd wait for the postman to drop it off, postman to drive away, and they'd come and snatch it. So think about that impact, right? And if you can't today answer for me how you keep your family safe, you definitely can't tell me how you're keeping your business safe. So it's about culture. It's about making a personal connection to a life skill, not compliance, not a slide deck and some check boxes. And for God's sakes, please stop phishing your employees. You're actually making it worse because they feel like you're out to get them. They feel like they've been victimized. There's companies that sell phishing awareness training, and I'm not saying that it doesn't have its place, but if you don't have a culture around security and you start phishing your employees, you're creating distrust, you're creating a feeling of being taken advantage of, and none of us like that. And so what you end up doing is creating an employee who's not going to tell you when they clicked the actual phishing link. Instead of an employee who goes, oops, because I'm a human, I make mistakes, I am gonna run down the hall, top speed, grab the security guy and go, I really screwed up, I'm super sorry, can we fix this? And as a security professional, if you tell me in the first 10 minutes, it's a non-event. Ransomware doesn't immediately start infecting. So if I can find out in the first 10 to 20 minutes that something has happened, there's a 99% chance I can prevent it from becoming a problem. If I find out 10 hours later when the first computer gets the splash screen that says you've been ransomed, yeah, most likely we're in big trouble. So change the way you approach this. It's a culture issue. It's not a training problem. It's a life skill problem. And the quicker we change our thinking about this and start engaging our users as fellow humans who also would like to stay safe, the better off we are. I'll give you one last saying and then cut it to Vincent. So we call it the information superhighway, right? That's what we call the internet. What if I told you most of us are drunk driving the wrong direction? That's what we're doing online. That's why we have to change our behavior.
I like that saying. So I agree with a lot of what you said, Ryan. In terms of awareness training, a lot of this awareness training says, if you see this, tell IT security. The idea there is, like Rich mentioned, we want to reduce that impact. We have something called a single loss expectancy, and if we have it as low as possible, it doesn't matter if it happens every single day because it's costing us pennies instead of thousands of dollars. However, if you have security awareness training and it works, and your employees identify there is something targeting them, do they know who actually is IT security? Is that somebody who knows how to fix computers but doesn't know anything about security? Do you actually have a plan for how to respond to that, and do you have tools in your environment ready to make sure that you can respond, or are you going to start deploying tools? When we deploy tools to an active network, it's much harder because the attackers are seeing that. They're reading your email. They're learning you just hired a security firm, so before that meeting you have with them, we're going to advance our schedule and start responding. And we really don't like to see when that happens, but unfortunately it's fairly common because there's a lot of organizations that don't have a plan. So awareness training is very valuable, but it has to be part of a strategy. And it has to be part of a risk mitigation strategy. If you're doing something for security and you can't think about how that maps back to the risk that the organization faces, then you're not effectively securing that organization. Because it doesn't matter what we deploy, what lessons we give. In our team, we have internal training on how to build malware and how to do forensics and how to do anti-forensics work because we want our investigators to have knowledge beyond what they need to keep them interested. But even in our own organization, if we don't have a plan of who to call and what to do when an incident happens, it doesn't matter who we have on staff. We're not going to be secure. And that is why a strategy is so important. And everything that we do, whether it's awareness training or buying firewalls or EDRs, there needs to be a strategy of how to secure that. And the cost to secure whatever that may be increases the longer it's in production. Which is why when you're working with new clients, security should probably be one of the first discussions because you're helping with client retention, you're helping them understand why they're investing in IT, and you're helping them understand their business. And in the end, that's going to mean you will have that client for a much longer period of time and save them a lot more money and make a lot more money for yourself.
Thanks. We're getting closer to the end of the session, and I'm just curious if there are any questions out there where someone wants to just get enlightened. Yes, sir.
I had one question. I see some of my clients are buying firewalls, and they're buying them without features like deep packet inspection. And they seem to have a false sense of security that because they have a firewall, in this particular with SMBs that don't have an IT team, they feel like they have a firewall, it's doing whatever firewalls do, but often it's not actually, because they haven't purchased all the correct features, doing what it is.
So small businesses purchasing minimally activated firewalls, thinking that they're safer than they actually are. How do we handle that as an industry?
You mentioned small business. I'll go up to a regional bank, and a regional bank bought a firewall with deep packet inspection and all of the blades, but they didn't have somebody design how that was going to work. They didn't have a service provider come in and implement it, so that $100,000 worth of equipment did nothing. And until they brought in monitoring, they had no idea that they were unprotected, no matter how much they were spending. So no matter what solutions you're buying, when you're doing feature comparison, you still have to map back to that strategy of how are we going to use this expense to mitigate our risk.
So a lot of customers are buying the purple blinky light because it's more secure than the blue blinky light. They don't know what they're buying. They're scared. You said security. You said you could solve it for me. That price sounds about right. Let's do business. They don't know how to use it. I've got a client, a school district. I serve a lot of K-12. It's a passion of mine. Purchased a SIM tool, okay, a very well-known and very expensive SIM tool. The vendor forgot to mention that without 3 full-time engineers, you can't even run this tool. Well, they're in a 5-year contract. So I was able to help them out, bring in some outside providers, some managed service providers who were able to do some contract work for them to actually get value back out of this tool. But to Vincent's point, if you don't have a strategy, and I go even further back, if you don't know why you're protecting what you're protecting, you need to stop. That's not time to spend money on buying tools. It's time to go back and look and ask the question, why? What does this do for me? What does this do for my business? What's the impact, right? Everything we do in the world of security is based on risk and likelihood, and those two things combined tell us impact, right? So we're able to figure out if this computer goes down, no big deal. If this computer goes down, we're out of business. So many businesses, and I don't care if they're small businesses or even large-scale Fortune 100s that we work with, are still struggling with those foundation basics. So when you're talking to your client and they say, I think I need a new firewall, stop them and say, why? Why? What are we trying to do here? What are we trying to protect? What is the risk that we're trying to limit? And if they can't answer that question, it's not time to buy things. It's time to do an assessment and figure out where we're at.
That's exactly what helped me as a consultant, is I would tell my clients no. I told them no all the time. And people say in customer service, don't say no. But how can I build trust and how can I advise them if I don't tell them when they're doing something that I don't think is in their best interest? They're hiring me for advice. I need to give them that honest advice. So when they say, we want you to price out firewalls for us and sell us a firewall, I'll say no, because it doesn't make sense. And I analyzed their network and I saw with their architecture, the firewall wouldn't have done anything because the only thing that was there was one printer. Everything else would not have gone through that firewall. So I said, redesign your network and we're going to do these other things instead, and then we can discuss installing a firewall on your network, but as part of a network redesign.
That's great. We've got about 30 seconds each to wrap. So Ryan, you want to start with a wrap?
Please focus on the fundamentals, and everybody needs your help. So unless you're allergic to money, there's work for you in cybersecurity.
Yes, I think remember that security is about relationships. Remember security is about risk. Focus on those two things. And another thing, when it comes to hiring, it's not all about certifications or a specific thing that you need to have to be in security. Some of the best security operators that I have found, hired, and kept on our team are the people who did not look like security people on paper, but they had technical drive and knowledge, and that's why I invest in time at the university to teach a non-credit program, is because there's all these people who really want to learn how to secure organizations, and they're learning about risk and all of the technology. Hire those people. And then for Vijilan, reach out to us if you are an IT service provider and you want to be able to secure your clients. We offer monitoring services, but we also now offer an advisory service. And if you want to see it, we're offering at 2 o'clock, we're doing an open Q&A. Anybody can ask their cybersecurity question, and I'll be taking them live. So if you have questions about one of your specific clients and you can anonymize it so that you don't break any NDAs, we welcome you to bring those questions over, and we'll be happy to answer them.
That's fantastic. Thanks. Would you join me in giving them a hand, please?